Welcome, everyone, to the story I'm telling myself. You are not crazy. We're a little late getting started because we're a live show, and that means sometimes technology thwarts us, tries its best to get in our way, but Angie and I are too smart for that. So please meet my guest today, Angie Redmond. Angie, take a moment and tell everybody about who you are.
Hi, Rita. Oh my gosh, I am so excited to be here today to talk with you. It's been so much fun watching you get these episodes kicked off and been able to listen to some amazing people you've already had on here. So honored to be one of those. So thank you for the invite. Yes, my name is Angie Redmond. I am the founder of an organization called Strive HR. I live with my family near Indianapolis, Indiana. And my company, just to tell you a little bit about that, I help organizations who are striving to create an award-winning workplace. And often that means we're taking a look at their employee engagement, figuring out how we can make their workplace culture better. And also I get the opportunity to do one-on-one coaching with HR leaders, which there's definitely an overlap with that. And I enjoy the opportunity to dabble into both of those areas in my business. So excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
Welcome. So glad to have you. And if you are joining us live, please jump in the comments and say hello. We love an interactive show. So we want to see you here. Stephanie, so glad to see you. We're able to join us today. Welcome back. Gail, glad to have you with us. We are coffee drinkers, Angie and I. So I have my coffee mug. I'm planning to sip. You guys are just sitting in on our little coffee chat here today. And Angie, you're going to share a story with us before you even start talking about the stories going on behind the scenes, but about a time in your life where you felt a real tug of war between the competing commitments of your professional life and your personal responsibility. So with that, go ahead, give us the setup. Tell everybody what was going on.
Absolutely. Well, I have a 25-ish year background in the field of human resources. So being focused on employees and what's going on in their employment as far as helping them be able to thrive in what they're doing is something that's always been really important to me. And I reached a point where I was finding a bit of disconnect with that for myself, meaning I wanted to be able to thrive in the work that I'm doing, but I felt this tug and this pull when it came to my personal life. And just to kind of set the stage, my husband travels a lot with his work, and often his travel is overseas. And as a mom, you can relate. I mean, there's often the games and the practices and all of these things. And it doesn't really matter if the other person that's helping you out is in the country or out of the country. There's just a lot going on when you need to shuffle kiddos around. So when he would be gone, like I said, it was out of the country a lot. So the fatigue definitely set in with being able to take care of everything at home and be there for the kids. To couple that, I had a wonderful job. I found myself, not by requirement, because I chose to put in so many extra hours. It was really hard to do all the things associated with that and do the things that I want to do as a mom and be with my family. And the third compounding thing that happened is my mother at the time was terminally ill. She was dealing with breast cancer, and resulted in some multiple hospital visits, lots of doctor's appointments. So I wanted to obviously be there for that. And so trying to juggle work, home, the family, and all the things, it really took a toll on me personally. And I wanted to be, dare I say, perfect at all the things. And we know that that's not possible, but I wanted to give my best at everything. And I just felt like I couldn't do that anymore. I felt like I couldn't be everything to everyone. So I really had to take a step back and figure out for myself, if I have limited amount of hours during the day, how do I want to spend those? And so I made the tough decision to leave corporate. And it was really tough because I worked with an amazing company, worked for a phenomenal CEO who was very supportive of everything going on in my life. So I was definitely very appreciative of that. But I just needed more time for me and for my family.
Before we get that far into the story, I'm going to pause you right here in the story, because I think a lot of people are right here where you and I are. If you are a perfectionist, if you have these tendencies, if you have this inner voice inside of your head that tells you all the time, that's not good enough, that's not perfect, you can't make a mistake, you need to do everything, and everything has to be at 100% all the time, raise your hand, because you are not alone. This is exactly what we're talking about, right? This recovering perfectionism. So tell us a little bit about the stories that your internal narrator was firing off at you as you're
Mhm.
juggling all three of these situations simultaneously and feeling like there is no room for you to do anything but show up perfect every time.
Well, I always thought I should be somewhere else. I always thought I should be doing something else. And I often felt I was leaving someone out or letting someone down. And I remember one of the many trips that I needed to go to the hospital to be with my mom and legging up. And that particular trip was a very impromptu. I mean, it was an emergency situation. The ambulance was there, took her to the hospital, lugged up my laptop, and I'm sitting in her hospital room. I should have been fully zoned in with her, what the doctors were saying, what needed to be done. But instead, I'm sitting on the couch in her hospital room, clicking on the computer, trying to stay connected with that. And also, hey, husband, I need you to take this one to this practice and this to here. And it was really
So still
hard.
trying to organize all this
Yes.
stuff behind the scenes. Can I just interrupt to tell a very quick story? Very similar about where you are with all of that. A couple of years ago, when I learned about the World Happiness Summit, I made the commitment like next year I'm going to be there. And next year happened to be in Milan or I'm sorry, Lake Como, Italy. So I was like, look, I've only been to Italy once. I've only been to Florence. And if I'm going to go to Lake Como, I'm going to see Milan and Lake Como. Like I'm going to spend some time there. So I gave myself permission, separate from the rest of my family, to go have this trip and have this experience, do the conference, and then also just be a tourist and hang out with one of my friends in Europe and do Milan. And I think I gave myself, I think I was gone somewhere around 12 days, something like that, maybe a little bit more. And when I landed, of course, you're all jet lagged and stuff. And my friend she doesn't have any kids. She's single. She meets me, and I was like, "Oh my God, is this what it feels like to be a man?" And she looked at me, and I said, "I have released myself of all responsibility for keeping up with the schedule at home. Like, I'm not going to try to manage that from here. I'm not interjecting myself with the time difference and everything. I get it all screwed up anyway. I have just handed all of that over to my husband and said, not my monkey, not my circus for the next 12 days." And it is so freeing. Like that mental load is so freeing when you choose to do that. And so here you are sitting in the hospital, and the story that you're telling yourself is you can't let anybody down, which is the title of our episode. And I remember that moment feeling free. And then, like about a week into my stay, my daughter emailed me and she said, "When are you coming home? I'm tired of eating pizza and spaghetti." And then I have the mom guilt, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm doing this thing for me. I'm out, seeing Europe, having this great trip, and I'm letting my daughter down. And and I actually had this thought of like, should I try to change my flight? Should I try to, and I finally just talked myself out of it and said, stop. Just you're in Milan, stay, enjoy, do what you're here to do. Everything will be fine. But it is so easy for those of us who really, it really does get to that perfectionist thing. And as much, I mean, there's some pleaser in there, but it's not so much about pleasing everybody else. It's that the identity that I want to have for myself as a mom is that I never let my children down.
Exactly.
And so it put you into the space where you realized that you're present with your mom, but you're not present.
Right. Right. And each of those roles, I saw myself as an advocate. So I felt that regardless whether an advocate for our employees, an advocate for my family, an advocate for my mom, I needed to be there to make things happen. And I think I was telling myself that things were going to be fine. The doctors had it under control. They knew what they were doing, right? The family, my husband could jump in and do that. The employees, I had a phenomenal team that handled everything during my absence. But that control piece comes in. We want to make sure that we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's to make sure that they happen.
And, all of us have potentially been in that situation where you're managing people. And how often do we want people to be who you were being in that moment, Angie? Mm-hmm. Right? We want people, despite everything else that's going on, we praise them. We praise them for prioritizing work, for not letting us down, all of those things, and not really thinking about this larger internal conflict that we are supporting.
Yeah, we bring it on ourselves.
It is. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I thank goodness. I'm a huge fan of the new generations in the workplace, because I feel like they are pushing us Gen Xers out of that old thinking a little bit, because I think they set boundaries better about that than we do. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's just so easy to be there. So tell us a little bit about how you came to the realization that you could not sustain and that something was going to change, and what kind of stories you started to have to navigate within your own head during that transition point.
Well, for me, it boiled down to flexibility. And like I said, I love the job that I was doing, love the people, but I had mad respect for the role. And so I also really had to take a step back and say, do I want to work these kind of hours consistently? Do I want to consistently be away from my family that amount of time? And then while I'm doing the work that I'm doing, is it lighting me up? And I really had to say, if I'm going to spend time away from my family, if I'm going to spend time doing something other than mom, wife, daughter, it had to light me up. And like I said, nothing was wrong with the company. Nothing was wrong with my role. I just really wanted to zone in on the kind of work that I was doing and to maintain that flexibility, because my mom's health did deteriorate and the kids were getting older and getting busier. And I knew the empty nest was right around the corner. So I really wanted to take a step back and say, I want to work 100% on my own terms. And lots of really long conversations with my husband about it. Not because he didn't support me. I am so blessed that he supported me emotionally, financially, you name it. He was 100% on board. It was almost convincing me.
Exactly. Yeah. I knew there had to be some convincing going on. Look, yeah. I have been there myself. When I decided to step out of my corporate role, my husband sold it to me as, you're just taking a sabbatical. Like, you've been working over 15 years nonstop in your corporate life. And doesn't even include all the work that I was doing in high school and everything. He's like, take a sabbatical. If you were in academia, they would let you have a sabbatical. And that's how he framed it to me, that I got to take a sabbatical in my life. And yet the stories, my internal stories were mad crazy. Like, you're never going to be able to step back in the door. You're going to have to take a lower salary when you come back. This gap is going to hurt you, like all of those things. So I'm curious to know, like, all of that internal narrative that you were trying to navigate, and luckily had your husband to help you through.
Oh, for sure. And then the conversations were probably 6 to 9 months in the making before it actually happened. So convincing myself that I knew it was helpful for our family. And my mom was 100% supportive of, I was so blessed. She was, whatever you want to do, I've got your back. She was my biggest cheerleader for sure. But I had to test the waters a little bit too. So I wasn't 100% sure at that time if I was going to leave. But I went out and I talked with a handful of CEOs and business owners and said, this is my idea I have for a business. Is this something you would find beneficial in your company? Would you hire someone such as myself as a consultant to help support you? Essentially interviewing them. And my first 3 conversations were yeses. And so I needed that to help build up my confidence to say, yeah, there's a need for this. But then when I ended up making the final decision, and I gave my organization 30 days, and I felt my responsibility was to fill the seat before I before I left, and make sure my team was ready for my departure. They were phenomenally talented. So I wasn't as worried about that, but I just wanted to be there to continuously support them. But as I was going around telling people within the organization and in my business community what I was doing, I was so worried about what people would say. Who do you think you are, going to go out and start your own business? Are you crazy? And I did I got more, you go for it. I got your back. You can do this. I got more of that. But the ones that gave me the look like, are you serious? That's what stuck out in my brain the most. And then I would go home thinking, oh my gosh, they looked at me like they thought I was nuts. Maybe this isn't a good idea.
Because your internal narrator was still in the back of your mind saying, Angie, I don't know. I think you're crazy. I don't, I mean, our internal narrators are so strong inside of our heads. I'm going to pause here in your story. Samaya, thank you for joining us again. I think that everybody who was suddenly moved all their lives into their house for 24/7 felt exactly what you're feeling. But I want to highlight here this: I failed big time and I couldn't change it. Trying to do everything, I felt like a failure, and you felt frustrated. And you are right; you were not the only person who experienced that. And I think we saw this huge rise in divorces because I think there was a lot of conflict about expecting different things from our partners when all of a sudden we are in that situation. And some couples were able to navigate that, and others were not.
Right. Which is so,
really
so sad.
Changing the rules, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different thing when you're sending your kids off to school and you're not having to be part of teaching them, maybe a little homework support, but all of a sudden when you got to make sure that they're getting online on time and you're trying to do your job and all those things, one of the most stressful times, Samaya, in my family's life was a time when, because I was the self-employed person working part-time, not bringing in, I went, before I left corporate, I was the top earner in our home. I was the big earner. When I left corporate, I really didn't chase replacing that income. My husband shifted his role and stuff, but in my mind mentally, what my internal critic was telling me, the narration that I had, which was a false narration, was, well, if you're not contributing economically, then you are responsible for more of this other burden, this other workload. And I wasn't asking for help from my husband. And then I was overcommitting and feeling resentful. And it was really impacting my relationship with primarily my kids, because I was showing up mean, angry, frustrated with them when it was really about me. And my husband would just look at me and he would say, you created that. You overcommitted. He wasn't going to bail me out. He was not going to enable me. He's really, really good at boundaries. And I realized, oh, hello, Mark. Glad that you're here. I realized through counseling, through family therapy, that I was telling myself a self-limiting story about asking for help. And I was creating this problem. Stephanie, thank you for being with us again. It was talking about her time as a contractor when she was not home. So she couldn't do all of those normal family duties because she was working away. But the impact of missing your kids. So these are real competing commitments. And I think this is the other important thing to know about all of this is that you are not failing. It's that you are struggling to juggle the competing commitments. And we find competing commitments in all kinds of areas of our lives. And, I think that it is really important to name it that way. This question of who am I letting down? When you start to name, well, who am I taking care of and who am I letting down? Now you're naming the competing commitments that you're experiencing.
Right. And if I were to ask any of those individuals if they felt that I was letting them down, I think they would all say absolutely not.
Right.
Now, in the time, I didn't think that. Running on coffee and 3 hours of sleep at night. I was just running like a chicken with my head cut off, thinking I needed to be everything for everyone. But now looking back, I really in my heart think they would say you did the best you could with what you had.
I think they
I
would
wish
too.
I could think that then like I do now. So I think living through it, and being able to take a step back and looking at, are there things I would have done differently? Yes. I might have handled my departure a little bit different for my company.
Well,
Yes,
let's really get into that. Let's turn this into some real advice for people.
Sure.
So it's a little bit of Monday morning quarterbacking, but it's good. Like the insights, you have the wisdom of having gotten to where you are now. Looking backwards, if you were able to counsel your earlier self in these moments, what wisdom, what questions, what advice would you share?
I would have explored more possibilities. In my mind, it was all or nothing. I either could be there, invested in the hours that I was working, doing everything, doing all the things, or I had to exit. Now, if I had it to do over again, I probably would have had more conversations with their senior leadership team to say, is there a way we can make this work? What are the other opportunities? Now, I was so blessed, as I mentioned, to work for an incredible CEO, and I could have turned it around a little bit more to learn more about entrepreneurship from him before I went out and did it on my own. And maybe things would have been different. I honestly don't know, but that's one thing I probably would have taken a step back is, how could this have, what are the opportunities we have? If this is the outcome, because this is something I talk to my clients about all the time. It's not the hours, it's the outcome. So if this is the ultimate outcome I want, which is more flexibility, more time with my family to do the kind of work that I'm really passionate about, how can we get to that outcome with what we have here? So I made it up in my head that it was all or nothing. I probably could not have gained the amount of flexibility that I wanted, given the kind of role that I had. But I should have probably had the conversation.
It is so easy. I think it is so easy to fall into the all or nothing trap of thinking.
Yeah.
And I love this idea that you're giving people of really, you got to do the internal work. You got to know what outcomes, what matters to you, what is most important, so you can make a good ask.
Sure.
If you just go to somebody and you say, I'm struggling, can you help me? That is not a good ask. But when you've done the work and you're saying, look, my mom is sick, I've got all these obligations at home, I need more flexibility. Could we work it out so that I could reduce my hours? Could we work it out so that I could have more remote working opportunities, whatever it might be? Could we look at my job and take these? I've thought about these responsibilities. Could we temporarily give these responsibilities to somebody else on the team to give me a little space, right? This is what you're talking about, opportunities, possibilities, right? But you got to do the work. And sometimes I find that I'm too close. And I think that's probably a lot of where you were, not to beat yourself up in that moment, Angie.
Right.
But when you're emotionally all in the middle of it, clarity is so hard to find.
Right. Now, hindsight, would I be where I'm at now if that had happened? No, I probably would not be. It would be a very, very different picture. And I am so thankful for where I'm at now. So my way of reframing it, what did I learn from that? And this every time I get on a coaching call with a client, we're referring back to my career and what I can take from my experience to be able to help them. So I believe that everything is a learning opportunity. I 100% believe that. I'm not a believer of things happen because they're supposed to. I'm a believer of what did we learn from what did happen and how can we move on from that? So I do feel that the growth I experienced during that time was a little bit drinking from a fire hydrant, which due to the career, the industry that I was at, that prepped me for that.
Yes.
That prepped me being in that kind of environment to be able to do. So, going back and looking at the highlights and what did I learn from that experience? But like I said, it was, I made the best decision I could with the data that I had at the time.
Well,
And I
and
think
look, I'm going to make this offer real quick. If you are joining us live or if you're in the replay, you can make the comment #replay and Angie and I will try to respond to you. But if you have if finding yourself in this situation, if you're finding yourself in this moment right now of competing commitments, not really sure what you can ask for, and you have a question that you would like to ask, please type it in the comments and we will do our best to respond before we close down our time together here in a few minutes. We will try to give you a little bit of help. And again, I'm going to drop in here right now. Oh, whoops, that's the wrong one. I'm going to drop in here Angie's web site address so that if you go out to her website address, you can find everything you need. You can find all of how to connect with her socials, you can ask for a meeting with her, anything you want to do. So it's Angie at strivehr.net. So make sure that you, if you have other questions, if you're going through this, part of the reason we're doing this episode is we recognized when we were talking, this is something that, and it is a really deep struggle when you're in the middle of it. Mm-hmm. Do not hesitate to reach out to either one of us and ask for some guidance or help or a conversation. And maybe we can ask you a question, offer you something that's going to help you find the clarity that you need in this moment. Because these are, again, they're highly charged emotional times. And when we're very emotional, we don't always have full access to our prefrontal cortex where we do our best higher level thinking. And so having a partner to help you through that. And sometimes you'll be lucky, like Angie, you'll have a family member or a close friend that can help you. But sometimes you need somebody that is completely removed from the situation. And that's when people go to coaches and counselors and other folks for that kind of help.
Right.
So, so you made this decision to start your business, and then you got started. So the last piece of this story that I would like for you to share, because I feel like the really redemptive moment is you listened and you said, I need this flexibility. I need these things. I'm going to change in my life. You could ask a lot of other questions. You didn't in the moment, but you made this decision. So once you started into your business, your mother is still very ill. Your family obligations are still your family obligations in your day-to-day household. What did you have to navigate in terms of the internal stories about now being responsible for your own business while you are still trying to support your mom and support your family?
My husband and I I'm so thankful for the partnership that he and I have, because that was something I really had to lean into. You referenced being a financial contributor to the household. That was a tough thing. You know, when you start out your business and you're going from a pretty good salary to nothing when you first start out, that played mind games with me a little bit. Is the role that I have in the household. How is that going to be different? And he was so supportive, and being able to say, well, you're a huge contributor because you're the one getting him to and from school. You're the one getting him to and from practice. You're running everything else in the house. What I was, and then I was also trying to run a brand new business. So I really had to lean back into my corporate scheduling thought of how do I get everything done. When I left, it was at the end of September. I took the first week of October off just to try and get used to what this new lifestyle was going to be like. Every fall, our family took a vacation to Florida every year. It was kind of, always go back to the same place. So we did that. And then when I got back, it was time to dig in and figure out what this looks like for me and how am I going to define my new success and what is that going to look like? As you mentioned, my mom was ill. I tried to go to as many of her appointments as I could. Shortly after getting back from that trip, I went to one of her appointments, and then I noticed my grandmother had come with her, which never happened. She never went to any of our appointments. And we went into the physician's room. At the time, my mother had, due to her cancer, had a really bad infection and did have to have leg amputation. So we're trying to get her in with her wheelchair into the room, and it's a little itty bitty tiny physician's room. And so there's myself, my stepfather, and then my grandmother all sitting on this little tiny couch in the room. And my mom's her wheelchair is taking up what little space was in. And the physician came in and talk about full circle moment when you know you're at the place where you're supposed to be. This woman was so kind, and she reached over and put her hands on my mom's knees and got kind of right in front of her face. And she said, "I see you brought them both. Are you going to tell them, or am I?" And the three of us are on the couch kind of looking at each other. My mom was a very, very strong-willed person, so I know where I get that from. She said, "You can." She didn't want to tell us. So this physician leans away from my mom, and she goes and right by us, and she holds my hand, and she holds my grandmother's hand, and she's reaching out for my stepdad as well. So mind you, this is late October. And she said that she was glad we all came to the appointment, and that we needed to head home from here. There wasn't really anything else to do. The appointment was wrapped up, but we needed to go enjoy the holidays because they would be her last. Did not know that the appointment prior that my mom and the physician had decided to not do any more treatments. So I had just launched a business. I knew I had months at best left with my mom. My husband was out of the country on a trip when I got this news. And that was validating for me that I made the right decision.
I love that.
That is exactly where I needed to be. So, you go through all the emotions. You don't really know what to expect. I had, as I launched the business, had partnered with a marketing firm who was helping me get the website up and get everything out. She was a friend of a friend who had also lost her mom due to breast cancer. So she was one of my first calls and said, "This is the news I just got. The press release is supposed to go out. We need to pause because I need to focus on my personal life right now." She said, "You don't worry. I'm going to keep everything running in the back end. And when you're ready, we'll be ready for you." So that was late October. My mom passed on March 4th. Had a lot of estate responsibilities and things like that to take care of. And then the following October, I officially relaunched the business. That marketing company was right there to support me and had everything ready to go. And the lessons that I learned during that year, I learned so much about what resilience was about, when it's okay to ask for help, when you need support, all of those things that I wish I would have had that skill set stronger when I was in my corporate seat. And that helped. I fully believe that was kind of my mom's way of helping support and enable me as I launched my business.
That's just beautiful. I think that you needed to have had these times prior to that of really identifying your competing demands, getting clear about what mattered to you, to give yourself the freedom in this moment to hit the pause button. Mm-hmm. And hopefully your inner critic wasn't beating you up too badly about that and just allowed you to choose your mom and what you needed for you in that moment. Mm-hmm. But if you had still been in corporate grinding on that, think about how hard it would have been.
Yeah. Well, there were
all of that.
Several, the ambulance was just here. We're headed to the hospital. There were several of those that happened. And if any HR leader or executive leader would like to talk about how you make your workplace more supportive of someone going through that, I'd love to have a conversation with them. I was so blessed I remember one particular situation where it was around when she was having her amputation, and I was sitting at my desk, and all of these people come into my office with huge carts of, I think Costco had dumped the truck right in front of there. And they said, "We don't want you guys to have to worry about where your meals, where your stepdad's meals, what you need." I mean, there wasn't enough room in my office for all of it. So just that little thing of, apparently they had gone around to the whole company and people were pitching in to help support for this. I mean, that little thing, that $1 or the $5 that somebody gave, what an impact that made to me to have that
Right.
support. It wasn't about the food. It wasn't about it was just knowing that all of those people were there to support me. So yeah, I have countless stories like that of things that were helpful for me at that time, as well as other people that I've worked with and what they've been able to experience. It's pretty magical what you can do to help somebody you're working with, or in any relationship, friend, family, coworker, to be there to support them in a challenging time.
Well, unfortunately, if we're at our time, we're gonna have to wrap this up. But look, if you are having this thought run through your head, who am I letting down? This is the signal. This is the bad signal I want you to see that you have some competing demands in your life. And the sooner you give yourself space and grace to really name and figure out what matters to you, the easier navigating and making choices going forward are going to be. Life throws us all kinds of craziness, and we get to choose how we respond. But if you let your inner critic have too much control, she is that unreliable narrator that's going to tell you that you just have to put more time in, get less sleep, do more this, do that, do whatever. She's going to take you to the playbook that you have used in the past that isn't necessarily right for this moment. And you have the right to say that's not the right playbook and I'm going to change it. And maybe you can take some of the plays that Angie just shared with you. Mark, thank you for the shout out in the comments. I appreciate you greatly. Angie, just any last things you want to share about your business, how people can reach out to you? You've done a wonderful job of sort of educating as you go, but I'll pop your email address up here, and striverhr.net is the website as well. You can reach out to Angie. Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn. In my bio at the top of LinkedIn, there is a link that just says Strive HR. And if you click on that, I have several free resources that people can download, access to various areas on my website as far as the blog and how they can work with me. And so that's really the best way, is everything's all in that one spot that they can get connected. So I like to provide a lot of free resources for HR and business leaders that about culture, about engagement, anything that can be a great quick reference for them.
Wonderful. Thank you for being with us. Thank you, everybody who was live in the comments. Love having you with us. Appreciate your participation with us. And please recommend this podcast, recommend this episode to other people that you know. It will be available for replay here on my Facebook page and on at Ignite Extraordinary YouTube podcast. This is a podcast live on YouTube as well. That's a great place for people to subscribe and never miss an episode. Tomorrow, come back at 10:30 Eastern Time. Debbie Potts is joining me. She is a cancer conqueror and survivor, and she's going to tell her story about what it's like to navigate that when that is in your body, and where you find the ability to overcome all of those self-defeating stories, the fear, etc., that comes with that. You're not going to want to miss that episode. We would love to have you in the comments. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you again soon. Bye. Thank you for joining us on The Story I'm Telling Myself. If you loved this episode, would you do us a big favor to help us reach a bigger audience? Simply subscribe to The Story I'm Telling Myself podcast and rate this episode and share it with a friend. Thank you for listening.